Part 1. The House on Hollow Bend Road. I never wanted to move out here. The house was old, a creaking, half-forgotten place on the edge of Hollow Bend Road, surrounded by acres of empty fields and a stretch of forest that felt too silent. When my grandmother passed away, she left the property to me. My parents told me I could either sell it or get a break from the city and live rent-free while I worked remotely. I thought it'd be peaceful. Fresh air, quiet, birdsong. It was quiet, all right. Too quiet. The first week was uneventful, just adjusting to the house's sounds, the floorboards expanding, pipes groaning, wind squeezing through cracked window frames. The walls seemed to breathe when the wind hit them. There was only one neighbor in sight, an old man across the field named Harold, who rarely came outside. He waved once on the day I arrived, then disappeared behind his curtains. I unpacked my things in the main bedroom, upstairs. The windows overlooked the empty road and the barn out back, which leaned like it was tired of existing. On the second night, I started hearing footsteps. Not heavy ones, just soft, deliberate creaks downstairs. At first, I thought it was the house settling again, but then I realized it was rhythmic. One step, pause, another, like someone pacing. I got up, grabbed my phone, turned on the flashlight, and walked to the top of the stairs. Nothing. The clock in the hallway ticked too loud. The shadows felt wrong, like they were hiding something. Then, I heard the kitchen door click. Not slam, not creak, just click, like the lock being turned. I froze. The thing about being truly alone is you can feel when you're not anymore. It's not about seeing someone. It's the weight in the air, the stillness that feels aware of you. I didn't sleep that night. By morning, I convinced myself I imagined it. Maybe I forgot to lock the door and the wind pushed it. I kept saying that while I made coffee, while I looked at the empty field outside. Then I noticed the muddy footprints near the door. Small, faint, leading from the outside to just inside the threshold. They weren't mine. I stood there for a full minute, coffee going cold in my hand, trying to make sense of it. Maybe the delivery guy? No. There were two footprints, one inside, one just outside, like someone opened the door, stepped in, then left again. I cleaned them up, locked the door, double-checked every window, and told myself I'd buy cameras next time I went to town. That night, it rained. The house always felt smaller when it rained. Sounds echoed in strange ways. At 11:47 p.m., while I was scrolling on my phone in bed, I got a text from an unknown number. "You should close your curtains." I stared at the message. The phone's light reflected faintly on the wet window behind me. Then, like a reflex, I turned. The curtains were open, just a few inches. Enough for someone outside to see me sitting in bed. My heart stopped. I jumped up, slammed them shut, and stood there in the dark, breathing hard. Them. Another message. Too late. I didn't reply. I called the police instead. They sent a patrol, but of course, by the time they arrived, no one was there. They checked the property, the barn, even the tree line. Nothing. The officer told me it was probably a prank, maybe someone local who saw the lights and decided to mess with me. After they left, the silence came back. Worse this time. I barely slept. Every creak, every sigh of wind made me flinch. Around 3 a.m., I heard something new. A knock from downstairs. 3 slow knocks. Then quiet. I didn't go down. I just sat there, clutching my phone, whispering to myself that morning would come soon. When it finally did, I found something on the front porch. A Polaroid photo, lying face up, damp from the rain. It was a picture of me. Taken through my bedroom window.
Candle, Candle, Part 2. The barn door was open. I didn't tell anyone about the photo. Not my parents, not the police, not even my friend Megan, who called me every few days to check if I'd gone full country hermit yet. What could I even say? Hey, someone's taking pictures of me through my window, but there's no sign of anyone? They'd tell me to move out immediately. Maybe I should have listened. Instead, I put the photo in a drawer and told myself it was some kind of sick joke. Maybe kids from the nearby town. That's what people do when they don't want to believe something is wrong. They rewrite reality. For the next few days, everything was normal again. No noises, no messages, just me, my work laptop, and the occasional hum of wind against the glass. Then, on Thursday morning, I noticed something strange. The barn door was open. I hadn't gone in there since I arrived. It smelled of hay, rust, and old oil. My grandmother used to keep tools in there, and once a horse decades ago. The heavy sliding door was always shut tight. I remember locking it the first day because the hinges made this awful screech when they moved. Now it was wide open, just a dark slit of blackness staring back at the house. From my kitchen window, I could see the dust moving in the light, like something had recently disturbed the air inside. I stood there for a long time, just watching, waiting for movement. Eventually, I told myself a story that made it less scary. Wind, raccoon, maybe the hinges gave out. Anything but the obvious. By noon, I forced myself to go check. I took a shovel with me, not because I thought it would help, but because holding something made me feel less helpless. The inside smelled worse than I remembered. Damp wood, mold, something faintly metallic. Sunlight cut through the roof in thin, weak rays, showing motes of dust floating everywhere. Everything looked untouched, until I noticed the corner. Someone had dragged an old tarp and hay bales together, making what looked like a sleeping spot. Blanket, empty water bottle, a crumpled snack wrapper. Someone had been staying here. I backed away slowly, my pulse in my throat. There was no way this was random. Whoever was texting me, whoever took that photo, they had been living here. That realization hit me harder than anything else, because the barn was less than 50 meters from my bedroom window. I left everything as it was and ran back to the house, locked every door, and called the police again. The same officer came, a middle-aged guy named Owens, with kind eyes, but the patience of someone who'd heard too many false alarms. He looked inside the barn, took some photos, and said, "Could be a trespasser passing through. Happens sometimes. You out here alone?" I nodded. He sighed. "All right, I'll file it, but if I were you, I'd stay somewhere else for a few nights." I said I would, but I didn't. I couldn't. My car's transmission had been acting up, and the closest motel was 30 miles away. So I did the next best thing. I moved a chair into my bedroom, facing the window, and stayed up that night with every light on. It was past 2 a.m. when I heard it again. The click. Same sound as before. The kitchen door. This time, though, I had left my phone recording audio, just in case. I kept it on the nightstand, screen down. I grabbed my flashlight and crept to the stairs. Every step made the wood moan beneath my feet. When I reached the landing, I aimed the light downward. Nothing. The front door was locked. The kitchen looked dark, but empty. Then something moved behind the glass of the back door. Just a shadow, a tall outline that swayed slightly, like someone breathing. I froze mid-step, afraid to blink. The figure turned, I swear it turned, and the light from the yard caught part of its face, a flash of pale skin, glasses, a smile. I stumbled backward, hitting the railing, and the flashlight fell from my hand. By the time I picked it up, the shadow was gone. When the police came the next morning, they found nothing again. No footprints, no sign of forced entry. But Officer Owens looked uneasy this time. He said he'd drive by more often. After they left, I sat in the kitchen and played back the audio from my phone. Mostly static, a few floor creaks, and then, at exactly 2:13 a.m., a whisper. So faint I had to turn the volume all the way up. "You shouldn't have locked the barn." My phone slipped from my hand because that voice wasn't outside. It was right next to the microphone.
Part 3. Scratching at the door. I didn't sleep after hearing that recording. For the rest of the night, I sat with my back against the wall, staring at the bedroom door like a cornered animal. Every sound, every creak, every brush of wind made my muscles lock. The thing that broke me wasn't fear. It was the realization that whoever was doing this wasn't just watching. They'd been inside. When morning finally came, I packed my bags. I was done. Screw the house, screw the inheritance. I just wanted to leave. But my car wouldn't start. Not even a sputter. I popped the hood and froze. The battery cables were cleanly cut. Someone had been under the hood while I slept. I walked back into the house shaking. My phone had no service again, a problem that came and went in this part of the countryside. That morning it felt deliberate, like the signal itself didn't want me calling for help. I decided to walk down to Harold's place, the old man across the field. From my kitchen window, his house always looked gray and motionless, the curtains drawn like he was hiding from the sun. The field between us was ankle-deep with wet grass, my shoes soaked through as I crossed, clutching my phone like a weapon. When I reached his porch, I noticed the smell,
a stale, rotten odor seeping from inside. It made my stomach twist. I knocked once, no answer. I tried again, louder. After a long pause, I heard slow footsteps approach from within. The door opened a few inches, and Harold's lined face appeared. He looked like he hadn't slept in days, eyes bloodshot, lips trembling slightly. "What do you want?" he rasped. "Someone's been watching me, staying in my barn, messing with my car. I don't know what to do." He stared at me for a few seconds, expression unreadable. Then he said quietly, "You should have never opened that house back up." My breath caught. "What are you talking about?" He shook his head. "Just leave before dark. That place—" He stopped mid-sentence, eyes darting toward the tree line. "Forget it. Go now." He shut the door, hard. I stood there for a minute too stunned to move. When I finally turned back toward my house, I noticed something I hadn't before. The upstairs curtain was open again, the one in my bedroom. I hadn't opened it. From this distance, I could see the faint outline of a figure behind the glass, still, watching. I started running. By the time I reached the porch, the window was empty. I burst inside, slammed the door, locked it, and backed away. My breath came in gasps. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. That night, I dragged the couch in front of the door and kept the lights on. Every so often, I'd check the windows just to make sure they were still closed. Around midnight, I heard it, scratching. Soft at first, like nails brushing against wood. It came from the back door, slow, deliberate. Scrape. Pause. Scrape. I didn't move. I just stared at the door, every instinct screaming not to make a sound. Then came a faint voice, muffled by the door, calm, polite. "You left the barn open again." I covered my mouth to stop from screaming. The scratching stopped. For what felt like hours, there was silence. I started to believe maybe it was over, until I heard a whisper from the vent above me. "Can I come in now?" I bolted upstairs and locked myself in the bathroom. When the morning light finally seeped through the curtains, I found the back door wide open. The lock hadn't been broken. It had been unlocked from the inside. And on the floor, next to the door frame, were small bits of metal. 2 screws from the vent cover.
Part 4. The Sound Beneath the Floor. That morning, I packed my bags again, this time for real. No excuses, no hesitation. I threw everything I could into a duffel and grabbed my grandmother's car keys. She kept an old pickup in the shed behind the barn. Maybe it still worked. But when I stepped outside, the world felt wrong. The air was thick, still, like even the wind was holding its breath. I kept glancing toward the barn as I crossed the yard. The door was closed again, perfectly, almost neatly, like someone had tidied up overnight. Inside the shed, the truck sat under a tarp. Dust blanketed it like snow. When I pulled the cover off, I felt an odd smell. Sharp, metallic, like iron and rot. The truck started on the first try. I didn't even think. I just floored it. I made it about 6 miles before the road twisted into the thick woods, and that's when I saw the sign. Road closed, bridge out. The only road leading back to town was blocked by heavy construction barriers and a trench where the bridge had been. No service, no signal,
just endless trees. I screamed until my throat hurt. I sat there in the driver's seat for what felt like an hour, trying to breathe, trying to think. Then I turned the truck around. I didn't want to, but where else could I go? When I pulled back into the driveway, it was already getting dark. The house looked older than ever, the windows like black eyes, the wood swollen with rain. I decided to wait inside until sunrise, then walk the road on foot if I had to. I brought the truck keys with me. I didn't even take my shoes off. By midnight, the noises started again, but this time, not from the vents, from underneath the floor. It was a faint, dragging sound, slow and irregular, like something crawling beneath the house. Boards groaned softly as it moved. I stood in the hallway trying to pinpoint it. The sound traveled from the kitchen to the living room, then stopped, right below me. For a long time there was nothing. Then, 3 knocks from the floorboards under my feet. I jumped back, heart hammering. The knocking came again, louder, like knuckles rapping wood. I backed into the kitchen, grabbed the biggest knife I could, and crouched near the counter, waiting. After a few minutes, the sound stopped. I thought maybe it had just been an animal, but when I crouched down and pressed my ear to the floor, I heard it. Breathing. Shaky, shallow breathing. Directly below me. I bolted out the back door and circled around to the cellar entrance. My grandmother's house had an old crawl space underneath. A dark, narrow gap barely 4 feet high, accessed by a wooden hatch. The hatch was open. I shined my flashlight inside and the beam caught something glinting. Metal. I crouched down and leaned closer and froze. It wasn't metal. It was a pair of glasses, folded neatly on the dirt. Next to them, a pile of empty Polaroid film packets. The flashlight flickered. For a half second, I thought I saw movement in the back corner, something shifting in the dark. Then a whisper came from deep inside the crawl space. "You came back." I dropped the light and ran. Inside the house, I slammed the hatch door shut and pushed the kitchen table over it. My whole body was shaking so badly I could barely breathe. Then I heard a thud from beneath the floor. Then another, harder this time. The table started to rattle as the pounding grew stronger. Dust fell from the ceiling. I backed toward the wall, knife trembling in my hand. Then, silence. The quiet stretched out, thick and heavy, until I thought maybe it was over. And then I heard a single, drawn-out sound that turned my stomach to ice. Someone laughing softly, right beneath me.
Part 5. The Crawl Space Door. The laughing didn't stop right away. It came in waves, soft at first, then sharper, like whoever was under there was trying to stifle it. Then silence again. I stood there for maybe 5 minutes, staring at the table I'd shoved over the crawl space door, waiting for something, anything to happen. Nothing did.
When I finally dared to move, I went upstairs, locked myself in the bedroom, and pushed a dresser in front of the door. I sat there with the knife still in my hand, my back to the wall, staring at the window like it might explode open at any second. At some point, exhaustion won. I must have drifted off, because when I opened my eyes, sunlight was creeping across the floor. The first thing I did was listen. No breathing, no scratching, just the wind outside. For a brief moment, I almost believed the nightmare was over, until I went downstairs. The kitchen table was back in place. Not pushed over the hatch, not even tilted. It was perfectly centered again, chairs tucked neatly underneath it, like nothing had happened. And on the table, in the middle of the wood, was a single Polaroid photo. My heart sank before I even picked it up. It was me, asleep in the chair upstairs, knife still in hand. I dropped it and stumbled back. Every instinct told me to run, but where? The only person within miles was Harold. I grabbed my flashlight and sprinted toward his house again. This time I didn't bother knocking. I shouted his name until the door opened. He looked worse than before. Paler, thinner, eyes sunken deep like he hadn't eaten or slept in days. When I held up the photo, his expression didn't change. He just said, quietly, "You saw him, didn't you?" I froze. "What do you mean, him?" Harold looked past me toward the tree line. "There's been someone living out here for years, since before I moved in. Your grandma knew. She tried to warn me when I bought this land, said not to use the house after dark, not to open the vents." My mouth dried. "Who?" He shook his head. "No one knows his name. He was just here. Some say he used to work the land before it was sold off. Others think he's just a drifter who never left. He hides under houses, barns, sheds, anywhere he can crawl into. And he watches." I could barely breathe. "So, you're saying—" He cut me off. "You need to leave, tonight. Walk if you have to. Just go before it gets dark." He pressed something into my hand, an old rusted key. "It locks the storm door from the outside. Use it." I didn't even thank him. I just ran back toward the house. The sky was already dimming, the fields turning gray and silent. When I reached the porch, I hesitated. The house looked different in the fading light, heavier somehow. The air smelled of damp wood and something faintly sweet. I unlocked the storm door, slammed it shut, and turned the key from the outside like Harold said. Then I ran back inside and nailed the windows closed with whatever I could find. For the first time in days, I felt a tiny flicker of control. But when night fell, I realized I'd made a mistake, because now I had trapped myself inside with him. It started with footsteps, not below me this time, in the hallway. Slow, dragging steps, bare feet against old wood. I gripped the knife and crouched near the dresser, listening. The steps moved toward the stairs. One creak. Pause. Another. Then a long silence, until I heard the faint rattle of the bedroom door handle. It turned once, twice, stopped. Then a whisper from the other side. "You locked me out." I pressed my mouth over my hand, every muscle screaming not to make a sound. The whisper came again, closer this time, right up against the door. "You know another way in." Then came a metallic noise, faint but familiar. The vent cover behind the dresser. Screws turning slowly, one by one.
Part 6. The breathing in the walls. The sound of those screws turning froze me to the floor. Tiny metallic squeaks, spaced apart, slow and deliberate, as if whoever was behind that vent wanted me to hear it. 1. Pause. 2. Pause. 3. By the fourth screw, I couldn't take it anymore. I lunged toward the dresser, trying to hold it against the wall, pressing all my weight forward. The metal cover rattled, like something on the other side was pushing back. I whispered to myself, "No, no, 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 no." Then everything went still. For almost a full minute, there was no sound. I leaned closer, stupidly, trying to listen. That's when I heard it. A single, shallow inhale, right behind the vent. I jumped back, heart pounding, and grabbed the flashlight. The beam shook violently as I aimed it at the wall. Dust floated through the light. The vent cover hung by one corner, a black gap yawning beneath it. And then, fingers. Thin, pale fingers slipped out and pressed against the edge of the cover, slow, deliberate, curling like they were feeling the room. I screamed and swung the flashlight at it, knocking the vent closed. I dragged the dresser tighter against the wall, heart hammering so loud it drowned out everything else. I didn't hear any movement after that. No footsteps, no breathing, just the groaning of the house. Hours crawled by. When the first gray light of morning leaked through the curtains, I finally moved the dresser. The vent cover was hanging loose, one screw on the floor. The inside was black pitch. I didn't look inside. I couldn't. Instead, I packed what little I hadn't already stuffed in my duffel bag, grabbed the truck keys, and ran for the door. The moment I stepped outside, I knew something was wrong. The barn door, the one I'd closed, locked, and chained, was open again. The chain lay on the ground, cut clean through. And on the porch railing, scrawled in the damp wood, were two words written in something dark and sticky. "Still here." I nearly threw up. My brain refused to process it. I sprinted to the truck, jammed the key into the ignition, and prayed. It started. I slammed it into reverse, backed onto the dirt road, and didn't look back. I drove until I hit the "road is closed" sign again, but something new caught my eye. Fresh tire tracks. Someone had been there recently, and they weren't mine. They came from the other side of the broken bridge. That made no sense. The bridge was out. It was a 50-foot drop to the creek bed below, but the tracks led right up to the edge, and then stopped. No vehicle, no footprints, nothing, just the faint smell of gasoline and something burnt. I backed away slowly, my eyes darting between the woods and the road. That's when I saw movement among the trees. A figure, half hidden by the shadows, just standing there. I couldn't make out the face, just the outline, but I knew it was him. He didn't move, he didn't chase, he just stood there, head tilted slightly, like he was studying me. I turned the truck around and sped home. Yes, home, because at that point I didn't know where else to go. The idea of staying in the open terrified me more than the house did. When I got back, the door was still open. The moment I stepped inside, I knew he'd been there. Every cabinet in the kitchen was open. The chairs had been moved. My phone, which I had left on the counter, was gone. And on the kitchen wall, written in thick black ink, were, "Check your recordings." I didn't understand until I remembered the audio files on my phone, the one from the night I'd recorded the breathing. My laptop was still in the living room. I turned it on and opened my synced folder. There was a new audio file. Timestamp last night, 3:12 a.m. I clicked play. At first, nothing, just static. Then footsteps, slow, careful, inside the bedroom. Then the faint creak of the dresser moving. Then my own voice, half asleep, whispering, "Hello?" And right after that, a man's voice, inches from the mic. "It's okay. You're just dreaming." The file ended. I stared at the screen until the monitor dimmed. I didn't even realize I was crying until I tasted salt on my lips. That night, I didn't turn on any lights. I just sat by the window, watching the fields. The wind picked up around midnight, whistling through the cracks of the old house. And under it, faint and rhythmic, I could hear it again, breathing from inside the walls.
Part 7. The Crawl Space. I didn't sleep that night. Not a second. Every creak of the floorboards, every flicker of shadow made me jump. That breathing, sometimes soft, sometimes deep, never stopped. It drifted through the vents, like someone crawling just behind the drywall, always keeping pace with me. By morning, I'd convinced myself it was impossible. Maybe the pipes, maybe raccoons, maybe my own mind finally fracturing under exhaustion. But then, around 7 a.m., I heard a sound I couldn't rationalize. A door latch clicking somewhere below the floor. I stood perfectly still. The sound came again, slow, steady, deliberate. It wasn't random scuffling. Someone was moving under the house. I pulled on my boots, grabbed the flashlight, and went outside. The grass was still wet from the morning dew. My breath fogged in the cold air as I walked toward the back of the house where the old crawl space hatch sat half buried in the dirt. When I reached it, I froze. The padlock that had sealed it was lying open in the grass. The metal latch itself was bent outward like it had been pried from the inside. The air around the hatch smelled strange, musty, but with an undertone of something rotten. I crouched and lifted the hatch slowly. It groaned, the hinges shrieking. My flashlight beam cut through the dust. The crawl space was a low, narrow tunnel, maybe 3 feet high, running beneath the entire house. I could see the wooden beams, the thick cobwebs, and something else. A trail in the dirt, like something had been dragged. I should have called the police. I should have left. But curiosity, fear, and some sick, compulsive need to know what was happening drove me forward. I got on my hands and knees and started crawling. The air was suffocating. My knees crunched over gravel and bone-dry wood chips. The flashlight flickered every few seconds, the battery dying again, of course. The trail wound deeper. I followed it around a support beam, and that's when I saw them. photographs. Dozens of them pinned between the beams with nails. Old Polaroids curling at the edges, yellowed by time. I took one down. My hand trembled. It was a picture of me, standing at the kitchen sink, taken from outside the window. Another photo showed me sleeping on the couch. Another, me unpacking boxes the first day I arrived. And another, me in the shower, the curtain half drawn. The air left my lungs. He'd been in the house from the start, watching. That's when something brushed my boot. I whipped around, shining the light behind me. The beam caught movement, a shadow ducking around a support pillar, fast, too fast. "Who's there?" I yelled, my voice cracking. No answer, just the sound of something scraping against the dirt, circling me. I crawled backward, trying to get to the hatch, the flashlight shaking violently. Dust fell from the beams as something shifted above me. Footsteps, slow and heavy, pacing across the living room floor. He wasn't just under the house. He was inside it again. I backed out of the crawl space, coughing, my shirt covered in dust. The morning light was harsh, blinding. I stumbled to my feet and slammed the hatch shut with trembling hands. Inside, the house was silent. Too silent. I checked every room, calling out. Nothing. The windows were still locked, the doors bolted. But in the living room, something had changed. All the furniture had been pushed toward the center of the room, forming a rough circle. And on the floor, written in black marker, were words that made my blood run cold. Stop looking. Beside it lay my missing phone, screen cracked, camera open, recording. The timer showed it had been filming for 6 hours. I hit play. The footage was dark at first, the camera facing the living room from a corner. Around 2:14 a.m., the screen flickered, movement. A man crawled out from the floor vent. Not from the hallway, not from the crawlspace hatch, straight from the vent beneath the couch. He pulled himself out like a snake shedding his skin, his body impossibly thin, his movements deliberate and patient. He stood there for a long time, just watching me sleep on the couch. Then, slowly, he turned his head toward the camera and smiled. I slammed the laptop shut so hard it echoed through the empty house. I didn't know what to do. The nearest police station was 20 miles away, and the last time I'd called they barely took me seriously. So I packed again, faster this time. Keys, wallet, flashlight, knife. I didn't even bother with clothes. When I stepped onto the porch, my heart nearly stopped. The fields were filled with footprints, hundreds of them, circling the house. Some were fresh, pressed deep into the mud, but others were fading, leading off toward the woods. And as the wind rustled through the corn, I heard something faint, carried from the distance. A voice, calling my name. Not shouting, not angry, just calm. You found me. Then silence. The sun was rising, but somehow it didn't feel like morning anymore. It felt like the beginning
of something much worse.
Part 8. The Tape Recorder. The voice drifted through the morning haze like smoke, calm, quiet, patient. "You found me." My stomach twisted. It came from somewhere near the barn, or maybe from the tree line. I couldn't tell. The sound was strange, almost like it wasn't coming from a person, but from an old speaker. I turned slowly, scanning the field. The fog clung thick over the grass, soft and silvery, swallowing the fence posts one by one. "Who's there?" I called out, but my voice cracked. No answer. Only the soft creak of the barn door, moving in the wind. I should have driven away. Every rational part of me screamed to leave, but curiosity, or fear, pulled me toward the sound. The mud squelched beneath my boots as I walked. Each step echoed, heavy and too loud. I reached the barn door and pushed it open just enough to look inside. At first, all I saw was darkness. Then, the faint beam of sunlight through a hole in the roof revealed the shape of something on the ground. A boxy, rectangular shape. It was an old tape recorder, the kind from the 1980s, with a cracked plastic body and two worn reels still spinning slowly. The voice came from it again, faint and warped through static. "You found me." The same words, repeating. I crouched beside it, the smell of old hay and rust filling my nose. There was a small cassette inside, labeled in black marker, "Listen." I hit stop, then rewind, then play. Static, a long, drawn-out hiss. Then, faintly, a recording of my own voice. "Testing, 1, 2, testing." I froze. It was from my phone, from the night I'd first recorded the breathing sound. Somehow, someone had transferred it onto this tape. Then, beneath my voice, I heard another sound. A shuffle, a low breath, then a whisper. "Behind you." I spun around so fast I almost fell over. The barn was empty, dust floating through sunlight, nothing but the creak of the old beams and the sound of my own pulse in my ears. But something had changed. The barn door I'd left half open was now completely shut, and when I tried to pull it, it wouldn't budge. It wasn't locked from the outside. It was held, like someone was pressing it shut with their weight. I slammed it with my shoulder, once, twice, nothing. My flashlight rolled across the floor, flickering. Then a soft, rhythmic tapping began on the other side of the door. Tap, tap, tap. 3 times, pause, 3 more. The pattern was familiar. I didn't realize why until it hit me. It was the same rhythm as the screws turning in the vent that night. Tap, tap, tap. The sound grew louder, harder, then silence. The next noise was worse. Something scraped against the wall behind me, slow, gritty, like nails on old wood. I turned, shining the flashlight, and there, on the far side of the barn, the boards were shifting. Something was pushing through. I ran for the back exit, a small side door near the feed bins. It gave way after 2 kicks. I spilled into the field, choking on my breath, the cold air burning my lungs. When I looked back, the barn door was wide open again, swinging in the breeze, and the tape recorder was gone. Only the cassette lay in the dirt. I picked it up. The label had changed. It no longer said "listen." Now, in the same black marker, were new words. "You're next." I dropped it and sprinted for the truck. When I reached it, the driver's side door was already open. The seat was reclined, the glove compartment hung open, and sitting neatly in the cup holder was a small, handheld voice recorder, a different one this time, its red light blinking. I hit play. Static again. Then my own footsteps, the sound of me walking to the barn, the creak of the door, my own breathing. It had recorded everything from just now, but right before the clip ended, another voice came through. Deep, close, whispering directly into the mic. You shouldn't have gone under the house. My blood turned to ice. I dropped the recorder and backed away. Every instinct screamed that I wasn't alone. The cornfield beside the driveway rustled, not from wind, but movement, something heavy shifting between the stalks. Then I heard it again. Breathing. Slow, close, human. I climbed into the truck, locked the doors, jammed the key into the ignition, but the engine didn't turn over. It just clicked, once, twice, 3 times. Then from the passenger side window, a reflection, a face pressed against the glass, smiling. And just like that, the engine roared to life. I didn't think. I floored it. The truck tore down the dirt road, bouncing over potholes, the barn shrinking in the mirror until it vanished behind the fog. But even as I drove, something in the back of my mind screamed that it wasn't over. Because when I glanced at the rearview mirror one last time, there was something new on the back seat. A small cassette tape, and written on it in the same black marker, Part 2.
Part 9. The recording that shouldn't exist. The drive out of that valley felt endless. The dirt road twisted through the fog like a serpent, and every time I checked the rearview mirror, I half expected to see headlights or that face again. But the road stayed empty, swallowed by gray. When the first gas station appeared, it felt like salvation. I pulled in, shaking, my nerves burnt raw. Inside, an old attendant looked up from behind the counter. "You okay, son?" he asked. I muttered something about needing the phone and stumbled to the payphone in the corner. The receiver buzzed softly as I lifted it, and before I could even dial, a whisper came through the line. "Don't." The voice was calm, familiar, close enough that I felt its breath through the static. I dropped the receiver, heart pounding, and the attendant frowned at me. "Bad line?" he asked. I didn't answer. I just nodded and walked to the restroom, locking the door behind me. The mirror above the sink was cracked, and the fluorescent light flickered with a faint buzz. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out the cassette I'd found in the truck, the one labeled Part 2. There was a dark red smear along its edge. I swallowed hard, connected it to my phone's adapter, and pressed play. Static. Then, faintly, my own breathing. My voice, panicked, distant, whispered, "Is there anyone else here?" Then another voice overlapped it, deep and gravelly. "You're going the wrong way." My blood went cold. The background wasn't quiet. I could hear the hum of my truck's engine, tires rolling over gravel. The tape wasn't a recording. It was live. I tore the headphones out and bolted back into the store. "Is there anyone outside?" I shouted. The old man blinked. "No one but you," he said. But before I could respond, I heard it, faint, muffled, coming from the direction of my truck. "You brought it with you." The words made my insides twist. I ran out, the old man right behind me. The driver's door hung open. Inside, the cassette deck was spinning. The Part 2 tape was gone. In its place, a new one sat in the tray, labeled in thick black letters, "Live." My phone buzzed in my pocket. A new file had appeared in my cloud drive,
live_recording 0947. Timestamp now. I pressed play. The first sound was the gas station itself, our voices, our footsteps, the door opening, the tape ejecting. Then silence. Then the same low voice that had haunted me since that night in the house, whispering, "You still don't get it, do you?" I dropped the phone. The old man's cigarette fell from his lips. He was staring past me, face pale, trembling. I turned. Across the road, barely visible through the fog, stood a figure, tall, still, perfectly motionless. He was wearing my clothes. Even from a distance, I could tell. It wasn't just someone dressed like me. It was me. He raised one hand slowly, holding something small and black between his fingers, the first cassette, the one labeled "Listen." And then, with a smile that didn't belong on any human face, he pressed a single finger to his lips. Shh. The lights of the gas station flickered once. Then, everything went black.
Part 10. The Final Broadcast. Darkness swallowed the gas station whole. 1 second, humming fluorescent lights. The next, absolute black. The kind that feels thick, like it has weight. I couldn't see the old man anymore. I couldn't even hear him breathe. The only sound was the wind outside, or what I thought was the wind, until I realized it had rhythm, like someone whispering words, too soft to understand. Then the sound of a match striking. A faint glow flickered to life. The old man's face appeared beside me, eyes wide, trembling. "He's not real," he whispered. "Don't look at it. Don't." The match went out. Something moved in the darkness, slow, careful, deliberate. The same way I'd heard footsteps in the house, behind the walls. A scrape, a shuffle, a breath. And then, from the pitch-black corner of the store, came the click of the cassette deck. Whir. It started playing on its own. "You can't leave." The voice filled the dark, calm and clear now. No static, no distortion, like it was speaking directly in my ear. "You brought me with you." I stumbled backward, tripping over a shelf, knocking down cans and bottles. "Where are you?" I screamed. "Everywhere." The light flickered back on for a split second, and I saw the shelves covered in tapes, hundreds of them, every one labeled with the same handwriting. "Listen, Part 2, Part 3, Part 4. Some had names written on them: Thomas, Martha, Cole. Then, on the top shelf, one with my own name. My stomach twisted. I reached up and grabbed it, hands trembling. The label said only "The Final Broadcast." The old man's voice came from behind me, low, strained, terrified. "You shouldn't touch that." When I turned, he was gone. Just gone. No sound, no movement. The door was still locked from the inside. And then the store radio, one that hadn't worked since I walked in, crackled to life. "This is the final broadcast." My name came through the static, clear as a bell. "He's been found. The subject is aware." My knees gave out. I dropped the tape. It cracked on the tile, and the moment it hit, the air around me shifted. Every sound in the room warped, higher, deeper, reversed. The lights flickered again, this time strobing like a broken heartbeat. In those flashes of light, I saw things that couldn't be real. People standing between the aisles, motionless, faces blurred, heads tilting in perfect unison toward me.
The last flash showed the reflection in the glass door, and behind me, standing inches away, was the other me, the fake, the copy. It leaned close to my ear, its voice soft, almost gentle. "This is where your story ends." Then it pressed something cold into my hand, the live tape. The moment I touched it, the sound cut out, total silence. The next thing I remember was waking up in my truck, parked on a completely different road. Midday sun pouring through the windshield. The gas station was gone, no sign it had ever existed. My phone sat on the dashboard. A new notification blinked. Upload complete. Final broadcast.mp3. I opened it with shaking hands. The file started playing automatically. It was my voice, calm, controlled. If you're hearing this, it means he found someone new. A pause, a breath. You brought him with you. Then static, and beneath that, faint, buried deep in the noise, another sound, breathing, right behind me.